Hi everyone, I'm Maddie,
And I'm Amber,
and we're
Witches Talking Tarot.
And this week we're going to be discussing some somber, I think that's the proper word, topics.
Mm.
These they're very important topics. Maybe
Yes.
not necessarily our usual.
Maybe not so much fun-loving, but you know us, we'll crack a joke anyway.
I don't know how we'll crack
It's
a joke,
gonna
but we'll
happen.
figure it out somehow.
It's gonna happen.
But these are very important episodes, and we both discussed it and decided, I think it's important to discuss. I think it's important to put these out there.
Because here's the thing. If you have a platform, if you have a voice, it's important to use it for more than just silly entertainment purposes or even what we see as important entertainment purposes, because most of our episodes we think are important subjects, but not the way that these subjects are important, because they affect all of us.
This week we're going to be talking about war.
Yes.
We're going to be talking about today the effects of war on nature. War destroys nature. But in some cases, like Amber and I have done some research, nature comes back, and sometimes it comes back even stronger. And it will continue to come back even if we don't.
That's right. No matter what we have managed to do to it so far, it has managed to show us there is always hope on the other side.
Life finds a way.
That's right.
It does. So, we specifically discussed where do you want to start? This is such a heavy topic. I'll let you choose.
I think the more fun topic is nuclear war, atomic war stuff. So well, I would say let's start with the discussion. Right. So yeah. So let's save that for the end. And I think the first thing that I want to talk about is recently we just went past the 100th anniversary of World War I. And so there's all these pictures out there on the internet. I bet a lot of our listeners have seen, and it's images of the landscape now. And, the land has come back and it's pockmarked with where there were trenches and where there were foxholes and everything. But, and you, like you mentioned, the undetonated, whatchamacallits, mines in the ground, you know what I mean? Yes. That are still there. And so one picture was it's a herd of sheep that graze. And then there's this thing right here, and it could, if one of the sheep steps on it. So war, the effects of war, the more modern the warfare becomes, the longer it lasts.
But as you said, nature
finds a way.
Life finds a way, absolutely. And it's so crazy to see these pictures, like you said, of a sheep grazing where these trenches were. You can see where these trenches were, and there's grass all over them. The land is still, and it just really makes me wonder, when we're gone, that's what it's gonna look like. It's just all the nature and
right. Well, and I mean, think about the Civil War part, for instance. Oh my God. Right? We walk there where these battles happened, and not only is the landscape affected, right? There's these big open areas that, yes, you could imagine has been mowed down to make it a park, but you can also imagine that it was trampled down, by so many hundreds of feet, and then so many hundreds of bodies, and soaked in so much blood. And so not only is there the physical aspect, I left out the fact that there's the spiritual aspect to discuss of the war on nature, or how war affects nature, because we've talked about it before. So I figure this is as good of an episode.
Ghosts of humans past.
Right, because okay, think about it. If you think about the effects of war on nature, and then you think about the fact that we can go to these Civil War sites and people see these time lapses where they see the soldiers so march, or they see things happening, right? If animals are so connected, do they see that? Do you think?
Maybe not all the time, but I do think so. I think they probably see it more than we do.
That's what I
Absolutely.
was
My
thinking.
mom got a picture at the Civil War Park of a man on a horse. He had a hat and he was on a horse and he was just there. Why was he there? What was he doing? What do they continue to do? And it's just
Well, and how does that spectral presence of what's left from all the trauma that was experienced in this one place, how does that affect the wildlife? Because if you think about it, like we've talked about animals being habituated to people. If these animals, I am speaking hypothetically, it's just something that I thought about and I was like, yeah, this is a great time to talk about it. Would the wildlife become more habituated to people because the wildlife sees these specters of humans and is used, like,
I hadn't
it's just
thought about
I
hadn't thought about that
I hadn't either. Yeah, but for this episode I thought about like how that affects nature in and of itself, and inherently does the presence of all that trauma in the ground from what happened between humans, does it affect the plants? I don't.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
I am sure, but at the same time, like, I don't see any visible sign of that when we walk in those places that exist here where we are able to fully experience them ourselves. Like, because I've been to like other Civil War sites, like that was like, we took a lot of road trips when I was growing up, and like my parents are the type that if you're passing, like I've been to Abraham Lincoln's birthplace and I've been to some other president's birthplace. Yeah, because we were passing by, and so it's like, oh, well, that's a piece of history,
right?
You know what I mean? Which, fun fact, piece of history, has nothing to do with this episode, but goes in line with that shit. Because I've seen like Sam Houston's birthplace, I'm pretty sure, because Houston, Texas, Anyway, in Missouri, there's a Houston. And I assumed that it couldn't possibly have anything to do with Sam Houston. For work, I had to go there a couple weeks ago, and the lady that I picked up said, yeah, it's named Houston because he came through here one time.
Oh, that is hilarious. Right? I love it so much. It definitely affected.
That's so funny. So, see, I told you we'd crack a joke, and it wasn't even inappropriate.
Amber and I discussed the...
I'm gonna cry, y'all. Anyway.
Well, I was going to mention the ocean.
Oh,
the ocean.
I just mean like in general. In one of these two episodes, like this week, Amber's gonna cry like a baby at some point.
The oceans are so fully affected by us. I was just reading that the sonars and warships will affect the echolocation of whales and dolphins, and it'll cause them trouble like finding
each other.
Exactly.
A mother and their child, that's how they connect, or that's how they can communicate in the water.
That's how they all communicate, and that is just so sad. I have seen videos where like a submarine's like having a conversation with a fucking whale, and it's like that poor motherfucking whale.
That whale's so confused. He's like, bitch, what?
Yeah, no, we got like a Dory
Baleen over here.
Right?
No, Baleen.
Exactly right.
What is wrong with you? Why are you so hard?
Right, and that ship is saying probably the most random ship, like rainbow. What the fuck are you talking about?
The whale's like, we're shooting Morse code at it. The whale doesn't know the alphabet, so it's like, what is wrong with you?
Literally.
I never thought about it like that.
But it affects the mammals in the ocean specifically, but not just the mammals, the fish as well, specifically danger fish.
Yes, like, sharks. Okay, great. The white tip shark has been forever changed by the activities of World War II, because all of the ships and planes that went down in the ocean, those sharks now associate plane wrecks and shipwrecks and submarine wrecks with human prey, because the largest shark attack they will follow ships around. The largest shark attack in U.S. or in the world's history, it was the USS Indiana.
Yes, and like 1,200 people
Shit
were on
freaks
board.
me out.
900 people went in the water, and 300 some people survived. The rest drowned and got eaten by
I've
sharks.
watched too many documentaries about that,
It
and I think I've seen a movie
to
or
make
two.
light
Like,
of a
I grew up-
situation.
Yeah,
the guy
we
from
watch
Jaws.
a lot of movies.
The guy from Jaws is from the SS Indianapolis, and he's hilarious. He's like, "Oh, fucking gonna get me a shark. Fuck sharks," you know what I mean? And it's like
He has a vendetta.
yes, he does against sharks because they ate everybody.
So war not only changed the way that the oceans interpret people, I mean, hence the killer whales fighting back finally. But it also gave us great entertainment because I love Jaws.
I do love Jaws. I love Jaws. There is a movie, SS Indianapolis. I saw it once. It was so sad. Oh, it was so sad. I can't. I love sharks, you guys.
Yeah, I was obsessed with World War II growing up because both my grandfathers were in D-Day, and the whole History Channel back when I was a kid.
Oh, fuck
it was always just World War II stuff. So I saw so many World War II documentaries and a lot of stuff about that because I also always watch Shark Week. I love sharks, like Florida girl, you know what I mean? Like, love me some sharks. But like that story has never left me, and our effect on the ecosystem in the ocean through the activities of war has also never left me, which is why I kind of had jotted down like maybe this would be, you know, interesting to talk about.
Well, while we're on the topic of World War II, Amber, you did some research on the atomic bombing in Hiroshima and
Nagasaki.
So I'd like a you know what? I won't. I was gonna say I'd like a Nagasaki roll. It just reminds me of like something I would order. Like an eel. I think eel is called something. Unagi. That's what it reminds me of, is eel. So when I hear that, that's what I think.
Well, and I won't lie, I looked up Nagasaki because I also looked up like the Marshall Islands where we were testing the atomic bomb before we ever set anything, like before we ever the atrocity of the atomic bombs ever occurred. And in Nagasaki, there were these two. Oh, son of a bitch, what kind of trees? I looked it up.
Mine's brighter and yours is more pastel.
I know. Well,
so great.
Yeah, my watermelon nails, these ones she had done last year. Look at our nails, guys. We have watermelon nails, if it'll focus.
And mine are bright red and hers are light pink.
Mine are light pink pastels. Because like I had just gotten pink with this green as the French tip or teal as the French tip. And then we were like, oh, they look like little watermelons if you put seeds on them. So I was like, I want watermelon nails. Like,
but it goes really well with our next episode.
Yep.
But anyway, as you were saying, the atomic bombing here in Nagasaki.
In Nagasaki, there were like the trees just were decimated, right? I mean, everything was decimated, guys. I mean, obviously. But you know what? The trees, not only were they decimated, but some people were able to be shielded from the blast winds by a tree blocking that, which is beautiful. You know, nature will save us if we give her the opportunity. Damn thing. I didn't even think I was going to cry yet. But it's so heartbreaking what happens in war. And when we set off the atomic bomb, it was from above because we dropped it on them. So the trees were taken out from above and their limbs were ripped off of them. And there are these two trees, and they were, I keep forgetting what kind of tree they were. But I am sorry, guys. I told you Amber was gonna cry like a baby. Okay. Okay. Look, I can't find it. Anyway, it was two trees. They're the same kind of tree, and 2 months after the bomb, they started blooming again, which gave the people there like hope because the trees could survive this. And they had been so devastated. Like the bamboo forests were just flattened by the winds from the bombs. But the trees, they're still there. There were 30 trees that survived.
Out
And
of
they're all
how
still
many?
there. Yeah, probably hundreds.
That's heartbreaking.
But they're there. You can see the scars, but they're still growing. They're still alive. They're thriving now. And there's a memorial of those two trees that were blooming after 2 months. And it's really beautiful because it seems like it's been set up as an actual memorial, like to remember. War is heartbreaking, y'all. Like, humans got to find a better way.
And it's not just heartbreaking to people, which it absolutely is, but it's also heartbreaking to nature. We were discussing, let's see, we've got World War II. We were discussing Vietnam.
Congo.
Oh,
Congo. I looked it up while you were getting your nails done, and you had already mentioned that the apes were wiped out, and a lot of other animals like bonobos were hunted more than they had been for bushmeat because people fled the conflict and they went into the forests and they went into the jungles so that they could survive. But they had to survive instead of the agriculture that they had set up, which was now being destroyed. They had to live off of the land, so they cleared forest area that wasn't normally cleared, and they had to eat bushmeat so that they could survive.
I can't imagine eating a primate.
I no judgment.
It's so close to home.
Yeah, no judgment. You have
no
to
judgment
survive.
at all. You got to do what you got to do to survive. But like me, myself, I'm like any sort of primate, any sort of monkey. I can't, and ape. I can't imagine that, and I can't imagine it was an easy decision.
Because I mean, like, you know, they lived there before. You know, like these. You got to think like it would be like us going into the forest and hunting a fox. You know what I mean? It's just like counterintuitive.
I just feel like apes are so much more. Apes are so smart. Not that other animals aren't smart, but like you said, it's so close to home. You know, but we were also discussing Vietnam. Vietnam, they used nature in that war. I mean, they used the jungle. They used the bamboo. I'm just, as I'm saying it, I'm just over here like the energy that went into using nature. Like that must have been so intense. You know what I mean? Like,
well, and if you think about the ancestors, right, which just popped in my head, but if you think about the ancestors that lived there, right, like let's go generations and generations back. These creatures and these plants would have been revered. They were part of the same. They understood we're all one. And so you got to think about how it creates generational traumas.
Right, absolutely. I mean, like, when I say they used nature, I mean they used bamboo, still alive, growing plants they used as weapons. And it's just like, damn.
Well, and you know, the wildlife gets affected, right, by the
sounds of the atomic bombs, the sounds of shooting and guns and bombs and whatever, but also these weapons, they release serious amount of fucking gases, of greenhouse gases. And that is so horrible for the environment. I just read, I'm so sorry.
You go ahead.
I just read that in Ethiopia, you know, there was a 2-year war and over 1 million, was it 12 million? It was either 1.2 or 12 million cows, donkeys, cattle were killed in the crossfires of this war, slaughtered. They were probably shot. You know what I mean? For what? Standing there. You know what I mean?
Or to punish to take away a resource from the people that you're trying to punish.
Exactly.
War that you're trying to take over. But also, nature shows us beautiful things from war. Because not only did the trees in Nagasaki bloom after 2 months, but the animals, okay, so this isn't war, but okay, you know what? Let's go back. in the Marshall Islands, where we tested the atomic bombs before we dropped them on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. You go back and you look at what there is now, and the animal life there thrives. The coral in the oceans where we tested the atomic bombs, not only is it not decimated like everybody thought it was going to be, it is healthy, it is thriving. It took what it could from the tragedy and it thrived. Like there was something about like it actually was like feeding on some of these chemical compounds in the atomic bomb as opposed to being destroyed by it. And then there are these crabs that are gigantic and they live off of the coconuts that were planted to replace what was blown up. But these coconuts, they're full of cesium or some bullshit, selenium, something with a C and an IUM at the end. And I'm sorry, I didn't write it down, but whatever. Anyway, it's like poison to people. Like it'll kill us. And it's like radioactive, whatever. But these coconuts are full of it, and these crabs live pretty much exclusively on it. And they're gigantic. They're thriving. They're doing great. Like genetically, they're just fine.
Mm-hmm.
And in Chernobyl, even though it's not war, but it does show us how nature is affected by these like horrible, horrific atrocities caused by humans. There are these frogs that exist there. They're like green tree frogs, but the ones that survived Chernobyl,
Mm-hmm.
they're like black because the darkest frogs are the ones that survived the initial blast.
Mm-hmm.
And they continue to get darker so that they can thrive in the environment that they live in, which is overloaded with toxins, which it's not safe for humans to live on that land for like another 20,000 years.
20,000 years.
20,000 years.
Like that is
that
insane.
is insane.
And I want to say, like, when we're talking about nature being affected by war and specifically these atomic bombs, we're a part of nature.
Yeah, I was gonna.
like we.
I just wanted to throw out the cool, happy
right.
things.
We're like going down the timeline,
yeah, because like the atomic bombs have shown us sped up evolution,
mm-hmm.
and that's really cool. And it shows us how nature can survive. But I just wanted to get that last happy bit out. So
people assume, you hear like people surviving an atomic blast, right? Oh my God, they've got fucking one eye, which of course this wouldn't happen immediately. This is like after having babies within radiation, people will start to be born with birth defect. Right. Yeah. If you survive the blast, assuming you fucking survive, which did anybody survive in Hiroshima?
I couldn't look at those images. I've seen.
Okay, I'm so sorry.
I looked at Nagasaki because I didn't know as much about Nagasaki. Hiroshima, I did know a lot about because I did know. I imagine
there was some survivors. There must be.
I know in Nagasaki there were a lot of survivors. Okay. I don't know about. I imagine in Hiroshima there were, but all I know for a fact about Hiroshima are the images where like the blast just like vaporized people and there's like the shadow of where they were. That's why I couldn't look into Hiroshima and the nature part. I'm sorry, guys. I was gonna say it's so I already cried.
I was gonna say it's so sad. It's like Pompeii, but the reality is Pompeii is not natural. Pompeii is not nearly as horrific as this man-made thing. I mean, it is sad, don't get me wrong, but it was a natural occurrence. But anyway, us being in radioactive land, like everything will be radioactive. The water will be radioactive. The animals will be radioactive.
The plants growing, if any, grow.
What happens when you have babies in a radioactive area? Animals have had babies in radioactive areas and they've been deformed.
Yeah, I saw like a deer that had like 2 extra back legs.
Yeah, they're deformed. Which means they'll also be deformed. What I mean? Yeah. People will be deformed. Right. How can we survive?
And like people with radiation poisoning, period, like they lose their hair.
They get hair,
like strange growths, like their bones start growing again. So like you might have a bone growth come out.
Like a horn. A horn on your head.
Okay, I could dig that. I mean,
well, not like a cool horn, like a weird radioactive horn, but like
that's cool.
Yeah, cool. Well, I mean, we see people who go through radiation cancer treatments. Okay,
yeah,
and they lose their hair and they're very pale And it's such a rough thing. Now think of that times a bazillion. That's controlled radiation. You know what I mean? And that's how it affects people physically. So much so. I mean, I've seen people go through chemotherapy and they're extremely sick. It's very hard to keep food down. They have no hair. Some people lose their hair. Very pale, eyes very water. That is controlled radiation. Now imagine complete uncontrolled radiation exposure. I mean, they evacuated Chernobyl for a reason.
And like some people chose to stay, you know, and like some of them, I guess, do all right because there are defenses in the human body. Like we're not supposed to be able to survive that, but life finds a way. Nature is magic, and there is magic within us, and we are a part of all of this. And the atomic bombs and all these chemical warfare, it's made from some of the same chemical compounds we're made of. You know what I mean? So like, I truly believe nature is magic, and that's why humans are able to survive so much more than anybody can ever think. But then there's not just the physical aspect. And so we're going to end on the saddest note, I think, because it's the emotional and psychological.
Oh, absolutely. And to not only realize,
because we are a part of nature, guys,
that we did this, and maybe not you or me, but the people we voted into power. And that's a very important topic, I think, this year. But the people that we voted into power were the people that fucking...
I keep getting sad in ways I wasn't expecting to. Damn it, Maddie.
I'm sorry. It's just, it's...
You mentioned this year's election.
We have to make a choice. We have to raise our voice.
We do.
Put that on a motherfucking t-shirt, please. We have to make a choice. We have to raise our voice. And that's what Amber and I are doing this week. We are raising our voices and sharing on our platform our thoughts and facts also. We are sharing not just our thoughts, but also facts that you may or may not know about the effects of war on nature and on humans and humanity.
Exactly. I mean, so let's talk about it from a mass perspective real quick. The nation of Germany has never been the same since the end of World War II.
Look at the Native Americans. I'm sorry to throw that out. I did not mean to interrupt. Sorry to touch you, but I did not mean to interrupt. The Native Americans still have not recovered from the I mean, they have to an extent, but that was a war and they were slaughtered. Yeah. And their people were slaughtered and their crops were slaughtered. We almost wiped them off the face of the fucking earth. Yeah. You know what I mean? And you were saying about Germany. I did not mean to interrupt.
I was just because I was obsessed with World War II, I do know so much about it. And one thing about how everything went with World War II is after the atrocities committed by the Nazi Party and the end of the war, the German people, whether they went along with it in the first place or not, they finally got to say, this was wrong. And they changed their entire way of life. They changed their education system. They taught about how wrong what they did was. They taught, they are so afraid of that kind of thing happening again. They changed all of their infrastructure because as a people, even though a lot of them were a part of the atrocities committed, and they came out after the fact and they said, never again. This can't happen ever again. And
I think that's a good way to end this episode is never.
Well,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I mean, I guess that would be, but I just thought we might talk a little bit about the people part because you had brought up shell shock and
right. Shell shock,
PTSD. Because that's a nation thing. But then beyond just nationally, individuals are the ones that have to here's the guy at top that wants you to go to war, and here's all the people that are working for him, and then here's all the people that go to war, and here's all the people that are taking care of things.
Do they give a shit about you fighting their war?
No, they don't.
You're just another brick in the fucking
wall. You are just another brick in the fucking wall.
And I know they make it seem like they care, right? We're gonna pay for your college.
Oh yeah, we are going to teach you how to have a career after you're in the military, except
how did the military react to the Vietnam vets when they came back? Were they
my
taking
uncle
care
was literally spit on. I asked him about it. Like I thought, I truly hoped that it was a complete like exaggeration. And I asked him once, I asked Uncle Casey, I was like, what was it like coming back from Vietnam? Like, what was it like being a Vietnam? Like, what was it like being in Vietnam? What was it like when you came home? And he would not speak in specifics. He said it was horrible being over there. He hated everything that he had to do. And when he came home, everyone treated him horribly, and none of it was worth anything. Not that it was worth anything in the first place, but like to fight for your country, or so you think. And then to come home and be told that you're awful because you did what you thought you were supposed to do.
Well,
and literally be spit upon.
And not even not
That's
just
not
the
an exaggeration.
Vietnam vets, because yes, let's go back to World War II. Look, we've all seen fucking Stand By Me. What happened to that one guy's dad? He stormed
the beaches at Normandy along with my grandpa.
Fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Because of everything that he saw, and he came home and he beat his son. Right?
Yeah.
I don't know if he had
because
a wife.
he couldn't live with
which
what
causes
done.
Generational trauma.
Right.
Or you have what they tell these people is, I saw this TikTok and I have to share it, which is, okay, so we've got the people coming back from World War I, right? I'm going to fight this war so my son doesn't have to. World War II.
20 fucking years later. There was really only 20 years before Like, I've never conceptualized that before.
World War II comes around. The son's fighting. I'm going to fight this war so my son doesn't have to.
Then Korea and Vietnam.
I'm going to fight this war so my son doesn't have to. Then what? Was it the Cold War? Well, that wasn't like a war. I think it would like Iraq was next.
Gulf War. My cousin was in the Navy in the Gulf War.
And then we've got Iraq. And then, my generation, we don't know anything.
Well, and I mean, like, America wasn't necessarily involved in it, but when I was growing up, there was Rwanda, which was like unimaginable atrocities. There was the war in the Dominican Republic of Congo, and there was Serbian conflict, and all of it was devastating on the land, but it was devastating on the people. And like, that's the thing, is a lot of these areas, like, we're Americans. And I think the majority of our listeners, according to the statistics that Spotify shows me, at least, most of our listeners are Americans as well. And we have enjoyed the benefit of being separate from most of this. Yeah, we sent the boys out there. We got to bring the boys back home.
But who has sent their boys here? You know what I mean? Since what was it? The Civil War was the last war
on our
soil, and that was us.
And that's privilege. That is absolutely a privilege. And I don't think we realize it enough. I don't think we think about it enough. Like, I'm one of the Americans that doesn't have insurance, right? But I still have the choice to go down to the doctor and either like use a credit card or like, hey, bill me and whatever. But like, when you're in a war-torn area, you don't have a choice of healthcare.
I think
you don't have a choice of anything.
To Americans, and I think that this is not even an intentional thing. No, it's okay. I feel like I cut you off, so I'm sorry. But when we think of war, never do we think about it really on our soil. It's always somewhere else. It's always specifically the Middle East, unless you're like a doomsday prepper.
Well, you know what I mean? Like, okay, so being like, I was pregnant with my oldest daughter when 9/11 happened, right? And I did for the next about a decade. I feared war coming over to ours. So I truly did. I was afraid like any day now it's going to happen. And then when that thing that shall not be named because, oh, goddamn, but that's funny. I wonder when she's going to see that flag up above her bed. But that guy.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I was a little confused.
I was terrified that like a C-word country was going to bomb us like every fucking day because that man was insane. I was terrified they were going to bomb us. Every day I was like, they're going to come
I was not
invade.
even worried about that. I'm going to be honest with you. I was worried about NK because that motherfucker went on Twitter and was
Oh, yeah,
no,
that too.
Rocket Man.
That too.
Why would
That too. I'm sorry. Both of those guys.
I did laugh because you have to
Kofifi.
laugh.
I named a cat. I named a fish Kofifi.
You
I mean, that shit was funny.
have to laugh because if you don't laugh, you're going to
Cry about it. I can't. I'm going to cry plenty next episode. So,
Right.
yeah, like.
But,
the human aspect, like, having to go through war, like, look, maybe you say what you were gonna say unless you were gonna be like wrapping it up.
no, I was just gonna say like,
go for it.
I've been watching Fallout. I was gonna say like, I just finished that series and it's actually not,
I really want to
watch
watch
that fucking out there.
Inaccurate.
It's not that inaccurate, and it's just you see if there's gonna be a war that changes the way the world is and nature, let it be a Planet of the Apes war. Like, you know what I mean? Like I feel like that's probably for the best. Like, not an atomic war.
Right? Like, I don't know how we dispose of atomic weaponry, but I really think that, not that anyone will listen to me, but I truly think that the governments of the world need to all disarm and disable and take apart, dismantle completely, ruin the plan so nobody knows how to do it anymore. Like, that shit is bad. It shouldn't exist, because when you got somebody who's egomaniac or a fucking megalomaniac or a fucking, like, there's so many different kinds of people that should not fucking exactly have the power to decide that an entire country is going to be wiped off the face of this earth. Because think about this, people. The more we literally shake this rock we live on, the more likely we are to break the rock we live on apart if we use that kind of shit. You know what I mean?
I truly believe the worst invention that humanity has created, or humans have created, is the atomic bomb.
I agree.
I think it will be the end of us.
I agree.
And I
mean that, or maybe the not the Hadron Accelerator. Check out last episodes.
Maybe not the end of us, but the end of all that we know. Because we have survived an ice age. We've survived a bunch of other shit I can't think of off the top of my head. I think humanity could survive an atomic bombing, but I don't think we will want to survive an atomic bombing.
Think about Apocalypse. That fucking that season of American Horror Story.
Exactly. Look at
that shit was terrifying.
Exactly.
Like, all these crazy people are in charge. It was like Fallout. They had all these different communities to do like random experiments with.
Right? Like, look, we got a sexy ghoul over here. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be attractive when you hit by an atomic bomb in real life.
Right? That too.
Like, I mean,
was not going there. I was thinking more of the fact that you're less likely to survive than TV has allowed you to think.
Absolutely. I just think that
it took me a second
nobody
to
survives in the surface. If nobody survives in the surface, people are still going to survive. You know why? Because people in power have bunkers. Yep. And they really fucking do. That's not a conspiracy theory. No, that is the truth.
And they've been building them like rapidly since the beginning of this year, the end of last year, which is funny on timing, but that's not for here or for there. Can you think of anything else that you wanted to say about the people aspect of war?
No, I don't think so. I think I've said it all.
So I'm going to close out then with the only thing that my grandfather said to my father about war, because he only talked to his son that was in Vietnam about war, except for this. And what we fail to realize, what we fail to think about, what we fail to remember when we romanticize war, because like you said,
you do. People do
romanticize war, and it's kind of disgusting. And my grandpa said, when asked about what it was like to be in World War II, he said, war is talking to your buddy 1 minute, and the next minute his brain is on your face. And I can't unhear those words, because that's one of the only things my grandfather ever said about the war. And he was a decorated war veteran. There are literally scenes in Saving Private Ryan that, whether they're based on what he did or not, he actually did those things. And it's not romantic.
No, it's not. I saw a video on my TikTok earlier today of lighters from Vietnam, and they were so sad. You know, the metal lighters.
Like Zippos?
Yes. And they all had different sayings on them. The one that stuck out the most to me was the one that had a peace sign on it. And it said, "Why me?" And that is awful. Is that not awful? That just really hurt.
That hurts because it makes me feel like that guy was a part of the draft.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure, absolutely. Like the whole, I wish I had saved the video because all of them had just had, one of them was like, "Do I gain anything when I kill someone?" He said something like guilt or something, and these were just Zippos found that Vietnam soldiers had. And they would carve into them. And it was just,
yeah. Like, yeah.
Well, on that note, I'd like to give a shout out to Melissa,
Death by DVD,
and
Victoria.
Thanks for supporting us on Patreon. You can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/witchestalkingtarot. We are also on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads at Witches Talking Tarot.
And we're on the X at Classiest Witches because we're the classiest witches you know.
Thanks for sitting with us for a second.
That was a really hard episode. Yeah.
I'm Maddie.
I'm Amber.
And we're Witches Talking Tarot.
We are the weirdos in this one.
Like a song, like a Santa snubble. Flip the switch and let the cauldron bubble. Sam.
Wow.